Have you tried diet after diet without finding long-term success? Well, believe it or not, it's not you. So many people think they know what they need to do to get healthy, but there's so much misinformation out there that many of us are sabotaging our health goals without even knowing it. Hi, I'm Carrie, a wife, mom, educator, and certified nutrition coach. After being frustrated by dieting and all the confusion out there about what actually works, I decided to figure it out. And what I discovered on my journey challenged everything I thought I knew about nutrition. And the solution is actually much simpler than you realize. So now, I'm on a mission to disrupt everything you think you know about nutrition too. Welcome to the Diet Disruptors Podcast. Well, hey there, I'm Carrie Lupoli, certified nutritionist, behavior specialist, and, all the things around health and wellness, especially as it relates to women. And I am joined on this podcast with the incredibly certifiable? No, certified,
yes, sometimes
well-experienced, and so knowledgeable coach, Deb. Deb and I are here together. Deb VanDusen is a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, a mindset coach. You literally have more certifications than I do for sure. But together we are starting off this series of podcasts called What's Really Weighing You Down? It's a deep dive look at what's going on today in our culture, in our bodies, in our minds, to be living with this fact that 9 out of 10 people are dying from metabolic disease right now in their 60s and 70s. 75% of people are either insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, or diabetic. We have an obesity rate that is 3 times what it was in 1975, and 90% of women have disordered thinking and eating around their food and their bodies. And so Coach Deb and I are here to unpack all of this. And Deb, this is going to take us a little while.
Yeah, because this is, we talk about like an onion or an artichoke, like you start pulling back one layer and then it leads to another topic. And even as you and I were talking about all of the different possible topics that we could potentially put in this podcast series, we just kept listing and kept listing and kept listing because there are so many nuances to this discussion. And it's a little heated sometimes too.
Yeah. I mean, we talk to hundreds and hundreds of women every single week about what they think is weighing them down, if you will. And we're so misinformed. So many think, just tell me what to eat. I've been on diet after diet. The bottom line is more than 50% of people will have done some sort of diet this year. And yet, why is it that 75% of people have some sort of, insulin resistance, pre-diabetes? Like it's not matching up.
No,
and,
it's not.
And Deb, you and I have been talking about this. We've been working together with clients for years and years and years. We've known each other for like a lifetime, literally. Grew up together and now do this work together, which I think is just so special. But when you and I mean, we've been doing this a long time and we know a lot of things, but you and I read a book called Salt, Sugar, Fat. Do I have that on right here, Salt, Sugar, Fat.
Yep.
And it prompted a discussion with us that we prompted with our clients that got us thinking differently than just, we got to tell people how to fuel their bodies. Let's unpack that, because that's sort of the root of how this podcast kind of came about, even though this was years and years ago. We didn't even realize this podcast series was in the making years ago. And today's episode is really about helping you to understand what it is we're going to be talking about. But what did we realize in that book?
So, well, first of all, I just remember reading that book and having a discussion with you and some other nutrition coaches about the concept of the fact that our culture has sort of set us up, especially in, I'm 50, Carrie, she's younger than I am.
I am basically
know,
50.
But we grew up in the era when salt, sugar, fat essentially came out. Like all of the marketing that was targeted at us when we were kids was basically, around eating more sugar, eating more salt, eating more fat, because
Without
fat
knowing
was
it.
right, exactly. And that was the thing, without knowing it. And because fat was villainized when we were kids, when you take fat out of something, like even if you go to the store and look at a nutrition label and look at something that's fat free, I want you to look at what ingredients they're putting in there, because when you take fat out, you have to put something in. They also
Make it
wanted
taste
things.
good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you have to make it taste good. You have to make it palatable. But the other thing is that you have to make it sit longer on a shelf, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about mass producing things and making sure that they can sit on a shelf, there's a lot of garbage that is allowed to go into our food that is honestly kind of a sin. And in reading that book and sort of talking about that and talking about, like, it was eye-opening because of the fact that we grew up in that era when all of these things were happening. Some of the examples that they gave in the book, you and I were both like, oh my gosh, I remember that. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we grew up in the era of like Special K and Pinch an Inch. Remember that?
Oh
And I
yeah.
was just reminded of the commercial for, I think it was Yoplait yogurt. I want the teeny weeny itsy itsy bitsy yellow polka dot in bikini, and
Uh-huh.
then she had the bikini hanging on the wall, and she
Yes.
kept walking past it eating yogurt.
Yep.
And it's like all of these things started like at the same time in a very interesting way, getting us to actually eat more processed food, believing we would lose weight because skinny was the goal.
Yes.
It's like it's so layered in issues. Like no wonder so many of us struggle with food in our bodies because of messaging that we heard when we were younger. But
And
that
that
book was a
also,
big prompt for us.
yes, and that also was around the time when like waif models came out. So it was sort
Mm,
of like went from being, models such as like Cindy Crawford
yep.
or Brooke Shields, and they look like women.
Yeah.
And then you have the waif models that came out, and they look like, honestly, prepubescent boys. And so if
They look
you
like what? What did you say?
prepubescent boys.
Oh, prepubescent. Well, that's true. And Kate Moss was actually quoted saying nothing
That's
tastes as
good.
good as skinny feels.
Skinny feels. Yeah. And like, what
Yeah.
kind of message was that sending? So
Yeah.
like that whole thing kind of set up, and that book kind of brought us back to a lot of the messaging that you and I heard as preteens, as teenagers.
Yeah.
And that kind of set us up like so many other women out there who are around our age, older than us, even some younger than us, who have sort of had these repeated messages time and time
Well,
again.
then we are raising
Yep.
children,
Yes.
right? And then we have
Yep.
social media that took
Yes.
over after that. It took over from the Special K commercials and the Insy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Polka Dot Bikini commercials
Yes.
to this. And so the point of all of this is when we read Salt, Sugar, Fat,
Yes.
we were nutrition coaches, Deb. Like you and I were coaching and doing amazing work with women around blood sugar stabilization. And that's our heart and soul. You actually are the one that phrased blood sugar stabilization being our body's love language, eating in the way that we teach to
Yep.
fuel our bodies, balancing our blood sugar every step of the way. But it's so easy to help people understand what they need to do to fuel their bodies. But we were missing, like that book really brought into light what's really going on today, with why we struggle so much. If you've ever said, I know what to do, I just don't do it. If you've ever tried diet after diet and you just feel like you're failing, if you feel like you keep giving into binges and cravings, and you don't understand why, you feel like you could eat an entire box of Oreo cookies and you don't understand it, you feel like this whole weight loss drug thing that's going on, like that you've tried everything and maybe I do need to do that. Maybe that's what I actually need to do because you don't want to be unhealthy. And there's so many layers to this. And it was that book that prompted it for us, Deb. And then after that, like with the weight loss pill conversation, has really bothered you and I so
Yeah.
much, because it's like dieting and exercise
Mhm.
or weight loss drugs. And
Mhm.
you and I have been working for years and years and years with women, especially because we know that they're sort of like the springboard for their whole family. I'm
Yep.
teaching them a simple, sustainable, satisfying solution that's literally reversing disease.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating when we just hear, people going after a weight loss drug. And what we're realizing is that we need to be a part of the solution in this conversation. We need to have a voice in it, because if we're teaching certain things to our clients and they're making all sorts of layers of progress that no weight loss pill could ever do,
Yep.
no diet could ever give, and no meal plan could ever give, and we're doing this multi-layered approach with our clients around what's really weighing them down,
Yep.
like we really have to do our part to be able to help educate everybody.
Yeah,
But
because I think people think that there's only two options and there
yes,
aren't. And you and I had this discussion the other day of it's not just this or this. You don't have to just choose between these two things.
right,
There is something different,
right.
but no one out there knows about it. And when you talk about it, it's just sort of like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
well, because it's not a social media post,
yeah,
Deb. It's not like balance your blood sugar and all will be well. Like
yeah.
that's a foundation. It's not like, um, I mean, I follow everybody on social media because it's sort of my job, and it's just so infuriating. I can see why everyone's so confused,
Mhm.
because it's like, eat 15 almonds at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you'll be guaranteed to lose weight.
Yep.
And we keep going after weight loss, like that's the end goal.
Yes.
And when we talk to women, we're like, we dig deep into what you want and why you want it. And
Mhm.
they've never been asked that before.
No.
And like, this podcast is going to be so powerful because we are going to really dig into the layers
Mhm.
of what's really weighing us down. And I think a lot of it's going to be eye-opening
Yeah.
for most people. Would you agree?
I do. And I think, one of the things that is really important for people to understand is that eating in the way that we eat, like I know a lot of times when we talk to people about, oh yeah, we eat on a regular basis. We're eating like 5 to 6 times a day. And people are like, I can't do that.
Right. Right.
And you can. And this is, if you think about it, it sort of takes us back more to the way we ate when we were babies, right?
Yeah.
Because we were sort of on this schedule and we were getting the nutrients that we needed. And we were happy and healthy the way that we were. And it's sort of like now, as we're doing this, it's really about, getting people to see that it's not just about the weight loss, but it's also about the health piece.
Mhm.
Because when you think about the way that we eat and balancing your blood sugar, people don't understand. People think, honestly, truly, that balancing your blood sugar is just for people with diabetes.
Yeah.
And it's not, because this is what every body does.
Yeah.
And as you say, you can balance your blood sugar in one of two ways. You can do it through food, or your body's going to do it itself. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, most people out there are over consuming on carbohydrates. And that's what's causing this insulin resistance. That's what's causing all of these metabolic diseases. And we're going to talk a little bit more about obesity, but part of it comes back to the whole thing of salt, sugar, fat.
Yep.
And that kind of was the epicenter of all of this, because food companies are making food to be addictive, right?
Mhm.
They're making it so that we do not feel satisfied.
Mhm.
You talk about like Pringles, for example. When people you start eating something, it could be anything, insert any food.
Any sort of processed
And you
food, right?
feel like you sit there and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I finished the whole bag. And then
Mhm.
you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of full. And
And
then
then you
an
can eat
hour and a
again.
half later, you're hungry again because you didn't actually satisfy yourself. And
Right.
now your body, which thought that it was going to get certain nutrients that it needs, didn't get the nutrients that it needed. And now your brain's like, no, I need some stuff.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
sort of creates this constant cycle of eating.
And you and I have talked about this forever. Our clients all understand this, and blood sugar stabilization is such a big foundational part of this. But then we know that there's also multi-layered, because we don't just teach people how to balance their blood sugar, right? We teach people the 6 spinning plates, nutrition being the foundation, but exercise, hydration, managing your stress, the importance of sleep, supplementation, all of those are pieces of the puzzle. But then the big part is like, why do we self-sabotage? What are my triggers, my personality? And then life shows up and we get curveballs, and a diet only works when works, quote unquote, works, if weight loss is the goal, when life is absolutely perfect, but you can't do it on vacation. You can't do it when work is busy. You can't do it when your kids are graduating. Like, and then we get ourselves all turned around and all messed up. And then we keep ending up in the same place that we were and thinking, I've tried it all, nothing works. And so we have, obviously, when we work with our clients, a whole system set up of how to support them through all of that. But it wasn't until you and I read, now this is what we do. We do book studies with our clients all the time, about 2 or 3 times a year. We're doing another book study, always diving into body, mind, or sustainability. Those are our 3 pillars that we work with our clients on. But there's one book in particular that came out, and you and I were just, and I kept texting you. I'm like, I think we should do this as a book study. And then I'm like, no, maybe we shouldn't do this as a book study. And I'm like, I think we should do this as a book study. And then as I got more and more into this book, I was like, Deb, this is all the layers of what's really weighing us down. But when we work with clients, we work with them for a lifetime. We have a pretty rigorous 3-month kind of approach to be able to help them. Rigorous is, I don't know if that's comprehensive, I should say,
Comprehensive.
right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
like, we can't do this in a social media post.
No.
And it was after reading this book that you and I were like, wait a minute. He's laying out here all the aspects of, now he's doing it through the lens of going on Ozempic and sort of a deep dive within himself about what's going on with his body on Ozempic, why he's on Ozempic, and what he really wants. And that journey of almost self-discovery from him, as you and I were reading it, we're like, this is what we do, and this is what we do, and this is what we do. And it was like all laid out in this book that's actually pretty amazing. And we thought, oh, we could use this as sort of our foundation to be able to put a podcast series together that will make sense for you. It will make it all make sense.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, and the book that we're talking about is called Magic Pill by Johann Hari. It's a deep dive, like I said, into his own journey using Ozempic, but it brings to light so many things. And so as I'm looking here at the topics we've brainstormed for this podcast, I mean, we are going to talk about so many different things. And I think, Deb, you even said it, like, as we were planning it out, you said, this is going to be controversial.
It is, because it gets people, you know, a lot of, as you and I were reading the book, like, we were going back about our own feelings about the topics. He's going back and forth with himself about what's happening to him.
And questioning everything. Like,
he is.
Like,
and I
taking
think
Ozempic, not taking Ozempic, but it just unraveled a whole bunch of layers around weight loss, health, and our culture today.
And he asks such great questions, and those questions gets this conversation going. But the conversation is in fact controversial, because when you talk about it or think about it, some of this has to do with the fact that our culture, as a Western society, we have to make changes in our culture and almost demand changes within, you know, the structures that we have, in order for it not to just be a choice between X, Y, or Z. Like, we need to re-educate. We need to hold food companies accountable. And so that's where the controversy comes in here. And some people might completely, you know, agree with taking weight loss drugs. That's their prerogative. And some people might be more interested in learning about blood sugar stabilization. It's a little bit longer process than taking a weight loss drug.
Well, maybe
you're not relying on something. You're not relying on taking a drug for the rest of your life.
Right.
And there's so many other avenues that it helps you in.
Exactly. And I think that that's the big thing. So what we know, and because we've been doing this so long, and now that the weight loss drug has kind of been around for this little bit of time where people are really like, I mean, one minute you hear this side effect, the next minute you hear this benefit, and then this side effect and this benefit. And we're going to really unpack the weight loss drug here, because he actually got me thinking a little differently about it in some aspects. But then it was very cool, because then he'd throw in the counter argument. Like, I was very impressed with how, in some ways, neutral he was about stuff but only neutral because he really went through one side of an argument and then went through another side of that same argument. And so, and it's the stuff that you and I have been talking about for years. But what's really interesting is that our clients over and over and over again have these impacts to their body by digging into how we teach them that is better than a weight loss drug. Without a doubt, within a month, bringing their A1C levels down from diabetic to pre-diabetic levels, from having zero energy and tons of craving to having tons of energy and zero cravings. And all of the things that I hear about the benefits of Ozempic or Wegovy or any of the weight loss drugs that we're seeing in our clients, and not just for a little while, but sustainably through all of life's curve balls. So as he was talking about all of these different layers, and I just kept saying, we do this at Diet. I'm literally writing in here going, we do this when we work with our clients. And then I was like, okay, now we have a little bit of an outline here of the things that we can talk about to people that are not our clients. And so we are going to talk about why obesity is not actually an issue everywhere in this world. Japan does not have this issue. So is obesity a disease? And this is where we're going to get a little controversial. Or is it, as he actually brings up in here, an artificial disease? And that's going to be controversial. We're going to talk about that. Really getting deep into what do you want and why do you want it? And when we talk to people every week, women especially, about their goals, you know, we are fans of a goal on a scale, right, Deb?
No, we're not. Because you can have, actually, we were talking to another nutritionist the other day, and she was telling us about this client that she was working with who was, you know, scale-wise, great, but her percentage of body fat was like 30%. And so, you know, when you can be really skinny or look a certain way, but not be healthy on the inside. And our goal for everybody is not just the aesthetic, but is more around the health. And I think that's why one of the topics that we need to delve into is really, what is your why? Because so many people are like, oh yeah, you know, I want to get healthy. But when it really comes down to it, they want to look a certain way.
And that's where we have to tap into the reason why people are doing Ozempic, right? Is it about health or is it about weight? Because the two are actually very different. And I think so much of us, if we really admit it, we are all about the ego versus wanting something from the heart. And that's going to be a hard topic for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, but one that we do every single day when we work with our clients. We are going to tap into weight loss drugs. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't know. I will say this, I have a bit of a bias about it, and I've been working on it. But there's a reason why I have a lot of bias. I think it's money. And I think the amount that we're seeing in here is about ego versus heart. And it's not making us healthier. We're going to talk about how our culture is actually killing us. And we are walking literally uphill to be able to get what we say we want. Our clients have to learn how to walk uphill. And they have to be able to show up for themselves in a different way than they ever have before. And we're going to show you what that looks like.
But some of this also goes into like behavioral changes, because you can go on to, you can take a weight loss drug, but still be eating the same stuff that you were eating. So you're not actually changing your health. You're not actually changing your family tree. And what we try to work with people on is not only changing your health, but changing your family tree, changing how you teach your kids. Because let's face it, right now, we have a childhood obesity epidemic. It is horrific. I work in a school. I do lunch duty sometimes, and I am honestly appalled by the lunches that are served. And I like want to just go back there and be like, okay, wait, no, we need to.
I would
because I don't let my own son buy school lunch.
And that's what we're saying around, like, you and I both had disordered eating. We both had, you know, issues with our weight and losing and gaining and dieting. And then we raised kids, right? And thank God you and I started our journey when we did so that we could teach our kids differently. But let's be honest, like this cycle is continuing and continuing, and we have to be the ones that break the cycle. And the answer is not that we provide Ozempic for kids.
No.
And if Japan doesn't need it, and there's plenty of other countries that do not even have to visit the weight loss drug topic,
Yep.
then there's other things that we can be doing here. And it's not an all or nothing. And
no, it's not.
This is why we're going to be controversial. We're going to talk about our bodies feeling stuck, feeling like you've done it all. We're going to talk about gut health because Deb, like I think people hear about gut health, but I don't think people really understand how pivotal it is. And if you really did understand how pivotal it was, you would do things differently.
Yes.
And you would consider a weight loss drug as literally the last possible option because of the havoc that it does on your gut.
Yeah. I mean, your gut is your second brain, right? And it hasn't been until more recently on research that they've done and the connection between our gut and our emotions, links between a microbiome that's not maybe as healthy and anxiety and depression. So there's like connections between all of these things. And there's more and more research that they're doing every day.
Yeah.
And there's
research now that
there's
research now that suggests maybe we do need an appendix, like that it's not just like this throwaway thing,
right?
Which is kind of interesting in there. We are going to talk about body positivity. And I mean, this is where the multi-layers come in, right? The body positivity movement, where we've gone from, in some ways, like we need to be thin to we need to celebrate all sizes. And you and I will say all day, yes, we all know our value. I have it right here. Know your value. Like to me, our value is never to be a number on a scale. And the body positivity movement has almost shamed people into trying to live a healthy lifestyle, recognizing that, really trying to sell people on the fact that if you are obese, you can also be very healthy. And that is a very hard argument to make, although we do have clients that weigh more than what their doctor may say is ideal, yet have incredibly healthy blood work.
Correct.
How is that possible? Well, these are the things that we're going to talk about. But what's really weighing us down is not just a number on a scale, but it is so many pieces. And then until we start to unravel each of those, you're going to be fighting this battle on your weight, on your identity, on your value, on your purpose, until the day you die, instead of actually living your purpose until the day you die. And if we can get to the root cause, and I would actually say root causes of what's really weighing you down, you can start to shed it. But right now, what we know is that you don't know all the layers of what's really weighing you down, and you're going after a meal plan, keto, fasting, as if that's going to be the solution to all the things that, let's face it, from the day we were born, we were sent certain messages, signals. We have personalities, we have relationships with ourselves, we have beliefs about ourselves. Plus, we have a knowledge or a lack of knowledge about food. Plus, we have an industry that is actively working against us being healthy. So because it's so layered, Deb and I decided we have to do this multi-part series that we want you to start from the beginning. So starting from this first episode in the series and work your way through, because we are going to assume that you're
right. And the topics, a lot of them are interconnected because there is so much interconnection between a lot of these topics, and one builds upon the other. And so it's important to kind of gain background knowledge in some cases before you can move on.
Yes. And this is a podcast. So obviously it's the audio, and we are also doing a video. So I'm here at my desk, Deb's at her desk, and we will be pulling up resources and quotes and research. And this has been like, I feel like, Deb, this is like 6 years of us like putting
Yep.
stuff together to be able to come up with a series that we think is going to be comprehensive enough for you to start to really then unpack and, peel the layers.
Yep.
We're done with the quick fix. We're done with the give me this drug, give me this diet, give me this like thing, and recognizing that we have to move more towards being educated
Yes.
and then doing something with that education.
Yes.
And as Deb and I are both educators, and we're both highly qualified to be able to teach this stuff, not just with our bodies, but also with our behaviors and our mindsets. Well, Deb, I don't know about you, but I am thrilled and excited to be able to unpack this. I can't wait for
Yep.
that.
I know, right? No,
Yeah.
and there's so much to unpack, and there's so much for people to learn. And one of the things that I know that sometimes when people go into, listening to podcasts and things like that, they're like, oh, I know this information. My challenge to you is to go into this with a beginner's mind and really put yourself back and say, okay, what can I learn from this information? Even if there's information that I'm hearing again, what new information can I learn today?
Yeah, I totally agree, because you and I, again, with all of our certifications and all of our experience coaching thousands of people, when we read this book, it tapped us into a whole nother like series of more and more research and resources, and just like salt, sugar, fat kind of like prompted us to go into a whole new direction. So even for us, it's like every one of these conversations, every time we're reading something, every time we're digging in, we're learning more. We're evolving, and we want you to evolve alongside us. So this series will last months. It really will, and we're excited about it because it deserves that time and attention. You deserve that time and attention. And the beautiful thing is that you're going to be able to implement pieces of what we're talking about throughout this whole entire process. So what's really weighing you down? Well, we're gonna really get into that so you can figure it out for yourself. Deb, I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we're doing this. And like you said, this has been kind of years in the making, and now we're putting it all together, and I'm excited to kind of share this with everyone.
Yep. All right. So catch us on the next episode, and we're going to go from there. We're going to talk about weight, right? Is it really about weight loss? Is it about health? What's the difference?
Yep.
Can they both live in the same goal?
Yep.
And where's it coming from?
Yep.
What do we want and why do we want it? So we're going to dig into that in the next episode. Deb, you're amazing. I'm super excited about this. Bye.
Bye.